United States government arsenal that can split a Hellfire missile like this?
No.
And do whatever blob thing it did and then keep going? Nothing?
Nothing.
All right, how about you, Chief Wiggins?
Nothing to my knowledge, ma'am.
Okay, and how about you, Mr. Borland?
I prefer to answer that in a skiff.
Okay, does this video scare you guys? Yes or no?
Yes.
Wiggins?
Yes.
Nat?
I had a different reaction. I was really happy that it got out. Thanks for providing
Curiosity
that,
kills the
Congressman.
cat. All right, Mr. Borland?
Yes, for
Okay. All right, that is the end of my questioning.
Chief, I was on a ship for a little bit. I was a gunner's mate on the USS Gettysburg for a couple of years. My question to you is, when you had your encounter and you saw it on the screen, you were in the CIC, is that correct?
That's correct. On an LCS ship, the CIC is on the bridge.
Throw away all your old reading glasses, sunglasses, and blue light filters. These are the last pair you'll ever need. These
We all did, the tactical action officer, myself, the RCO, and two others that were on watch. We were all in the same space, so we were all looking at the Sapphire screen all at the same time.
Because in the other couple instances with the witnesses, you guys just saw it by yourself, is that correct? Mr. Borland, you saw it by yourself?
me, yes, sir.
Mr. Nusatelli, you saw this by yourself?
No, there were multiple witnesses in every case at Vandenberg.
Okay. How long did that encounter take place, Chief?
So the encounter itself, from the time I recognized on my radar to the time after the video ends, was probably about 5 to 7 minutes.
What speed was the object moving at?
When I first witnessed off the port bridge wing the object moving out of the water, what I thought was originally just a light on the water, something on the horizon, and surfacing and going into the air, I then knew it was an air contact. But as an air controller myself, I started thinking and going through kind of like my checklist in my mind. Could it be a helo? But it's not blinking lights. So I then realized this is something I've never seen before. So the speed itself, just going from the horizon to about maybe 3,000 to 4,000 feet in the air, was very slow, slowly rising. And then it sped up. I'm not an expert at knowing specific speeds of aircraft just by visual eye, but I would say probably 1-2 Mach instantly into the rest of the formation. I didn't notice visually with my own eyes the other 3 objects until I went back to my radar and also utilized Sapphire to see that, in fact, there were 4 total. And then again, when they all left after a certain amount of time, it was nearly instantaneous.
So you spotted it visually first, Chief, and then went back to your radar, or did you guys spot it on radar first?
Radar first, because that was my watch station.
And then you went out to the port bridge wing, is that correct?
Correct, to verify what I saw on my radar.
What range was it at, Chief, when you were able to see it visibly?
I would say about 7 nautical miles, 7 to 8 nautical miles of a light from the ship.
Wow. Thank you. I yield back.
Chief Wiggins, you said that it emerged from the ocean. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And before it did, it was glowing. It was a glowing object under the water.
That part I couldn't tell because it was nighttime at 1915 approximately, and it was also at a distance. So it's very hard to tell the difference between something on the horizon and something surfacing from the water. My personal thoughts after seeing what I saw is that it did in fact come from the water, but I don't have visual evidence showing exactly, that it did in fact come from the water. But I had to go through my process of elimination and try to figure out, was this a ship on the horizon just showing its lights at night, but to see it surface, then it made me question, okay, where did this come from? If it's flying and it's not a drone or anything like that, where was its origin? Where did it start?
Mr. Knapp, in your testimony and in this document, You detail an event that happened in Russia where their nuclear missiles were activated, and we were close to a World War III at that time, which is startling to hear. It's also good to know that as we have investigated the JFK files as well, that we're learning that that there was a document that was sent between Russia. There was an agreement between Russia and the United States that if they were to see some unidentified objects over sensitive sites, that they would report it to each other. Are you familiar with that document?
Yes, I'm also familiar with the rhetoric, public rhetoric between President Reagan and Gorbachev at the time, too, that they traded statements about, wouldn't it be something if we were threatened by something from way outside, how we might work together. I know for sure that they had conversations about it, and I know we did reach an agreement to try to lessen the possibility that us detecting a UFO or group of UFOs would not be mistaken for a bunch of Russian missiles. There were exchanges of that sort that went back and forth.
Yeah, and I can imagine this is, to me, the validity of this document is underscored by the fact that Russia would not want this to be known. They absolutely would not want to know, the public to know, or the United States to know that there was a vulnerability in their missile systems. Would you agree?
Absolutely, and you know, and we had many similar incidents at our nuclear weapons facilities here that have all been sort of swept under the rug. But it's pretty scary when you take down 10 missile silos during tense times, and you don't have a better explanation for it than it was a special test of security mechanisms or using EMPs, which is a preposterous explanation.
At this point, I think it's clear from the hearing that there's advanced technologies that are taking place in our airspace. You know, the question is, and I posed it in one of the previous hearings, is it ours, is it theirs, or is it otherworldly?
Throw away all your old reading glasses, sunglasses, and blue light filters.
What would you suggest, sir?
One piece of evidence, I would start with this hearing, in the first hearing. There is no evidence.
But is there a specific, exactly, but is there a specific evidence or footage or document that you think lends extreme credibility to what we're discussing today?
I would say this new video we're seeing today is exceptional evidence that we're dealing with something.
With the kinetic?
Yes.
Mr. Wiggins?
Sir, I'd have to say that if just the average person here in America looked at absolutely everything that has come across television, the internet, etc., you can't tell yourself that 100% of what's being recorded is fake or false. You have to, at some point, understand that there's something else out there.
Well, I mean, and you bring an interesting point. You know, in the law enforcement community, anytime you're conducting an investigation, you're always looking at the totality of the circumstances. You're looking at all the evidence and how they piece together. And so that would be my, advice to the American people, that this is a journey that is just beginning from a congressional perspective, but you have decades of data, some of it not real, much of it is, but thanks to Chairwoman Luna, we're now presenting this to the American people. And I think this latest video from Mr. Burleson is something that should get everyone pause. When you see the 3 orbs that drop, was that in a defensive posture or was that in an offensive posture? And what capabilities did those orbs have that we, quite frankly, may not have? Mr. Knapp?
As I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks, what hooked me on the story was the paper trail, these documents that shouldn't exist. We've been told for decades, over and over, there's nothing to it. It's not a threat. You can go about your business. And then when FOIA becomes the law of the land, thousands of pages to the contrary leak out. There's a memo by General Nathan Twining in 1947 when the country was being overflown by dozens of UFOs, hundreds of UFOs, in which he said, look, this is not visionary or fictitious, it's real. These things are craft. They're not ours. They outperform anything we've got. I mean, if you follow the paper trail of documents that they wrote before the military got wise and realized that FOIA really exists and changed their tune and not put things in writing, it spells it out pretty clearly. I'll go refer back to Russia. One incident I did not mention to Representative Burleson is Colonel Sokolov in that Ministry of Defense program said there were 40 incidents where Russian warplanes were sent to intercept UFOs, and they were ordered to fire on them. And for the most part, the UFOs would zip away. 3 of the pilots, though, did fire at these things. Those 3 planes stalled out, crashed. 2 of those pilots died. And after that, the Russians changed the standing order. If you see a UFO, leave them alone. No country in the world wants to say and admit that these objects are flying around in our airspace, and there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, who wants to say that? The U.S. certainly doesn't, and the Russians didn't either.
And I've got to be almost out of time, but Mr. Berlin, then you, sir, real quickly.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think Bob Lazar, and not for the reasons that most would talk about, mainly because Bob Lazar was immediately discredited. They said he never worked where he worked. They said he never did what he did. But yet Bob Lazar showed up with a bunch of friends and a video camera and was filming these test flights in the middle of the desert. So clearly he knew something.
Dylan, knowing you testified to Arrow, are they obfuscating when they claim to have discovered no evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity, or technology, and are they lying to the American public?
As I said before, it's a manipulation of the public perception. The statement, scientific evidence of extraterrestrials, is a true statement. It is not the truth about what is happening and what we have.
Any of y'all like to comment on that further? Mr. Knapp, you're getting edgy.
It's splitting hairs. No proof that they're extraterrestrials. What would that proof look like? A piece of kryptonite? What would it be? I mean, we could be talking about different forms of non-human intelligence. I think the dominant paradigm is that they come from outer space, somewhere else, and they have some way that they can cross those vast distances that we can't even imagine doing. But not necessarily, that's not necessarily the answer. So asking for proof of extraterrestrials might not be the answer at all. It's splitting hairs. We don't know where they're from. I don't know anyone who knows the answer for sure. They call them aliens just as a placekeeper kind of a word, but no one in all these programs who've studied this stuff for years, people with much bigger brains than mine, knows the answer for sure.
I've talked to Navy folks that some of the deep sea areas, they think there might be something there, that they're here, and I don't know when they got here. Another point that needs to be made is every time, we say we're going to back engineer or whatever you want to call it, these craft, I always say, like, it'd be like if you took I ride motorcycles, but if you took like an Indian or a Harley to the people that came over here on the Mayflower, they'd see a bright, shiny object. They might polish it. They might get it started. I doubt they could. They couldn't work on it. They couldn't put fuel. They wouldn't be able to have the capability of putting fuel in it. I just think that's we're scratching at something that we don't have any knowledge of, and that's why it's just taken so dadgum long. But they do know, first one that cracks that code, it's over. I mean, it's energy, it's power, it's everything. And I worry too that in the wrong hands that they do that, they keep it from the rest of us because they're so invested in whatever energy sources we have here that their billionaire buddies are going to profit, and they can't retool because they know once it's out on the internet, it's over. And so I think there's a lot of things going after it, and I think that's why the move to discredit folks is so rapid too. I think they point to them and they put the dogs on them, and it disgusts me.
There's a price to be paid for that too. The Russians and Chinese are trying to figure this out as well, but they don't have the same kind of stigma. They tell their best scientists and engineers, get in there and work on it. And they've been doing it for a very long time, might have a head start on us. Here, we don't have our best scientists and engineers working on it because they've been told it's nonsense. The stigma is very real for people like that.
I agree.
Mr. Nusatelli, when you heard the testimony of Mr. Knapp talking about these missiles were shut down or turned on in Russia, does that remind you, when you hear these stories, it's got to remind you of the event that happened on your base?
Absolutely. There are many accounts of incursions of this type taking place. I believe in the 60s we had a similar incursion in New England, and same thing happened. There were these objects coming over the base at low altitude, 200 feet over the base security police, and they were scrambling fighters, and then the objects would just fly off, and that went on for weeks. So the historical record has laid out that there's a pattern, that our installations are visited by these craft. You know, they come in and do whatever they're doing, and then they leave. And we don't know how to respond. We don't know how to protect the installation. So that's why we're here.
When you first heard, and we're having to report on these incidents that were being witnessed by other individuals, did you believe them? Did you yourself believe it would be true until you saw it?
Yeah, these are people I've worked with for years, deployed with. You know, I was in some of their weddings. These are people that I worked with every day of my life. Usually when the events were occurring, we were all together. You know, there'd be 40, 60, 100 people on duty during these encounters.
Really?
Yeah.
All seeing it at the same time?
Yes, these encounters were playing out while we were on duty, and we were responding and investigating in real time as they occurred.
And as you said, the importance of your operation was highly important because they said it's the most important in 25 years, the research that you were conducting.
For that particular launch, we had 500 Air Force police officers guarding the launch. 500 people. It was that critical.
Wow.
But had this thing showed up, we wouldn't have been able to do anything to prevent it showing up.
Real quickly, can you just re-describe size and whether or not you heard anything? It was, how big, wise?
The two square objects were at least as large as a football field. The second encounter, they think it was much larger than a football field. We're talking like flying buildings. The object I saw was about 30 feet in diameter.
And to confirm, you were not the only person that saw this.
Correct.
I think I was also told that there was also reports of this in a police blotter in the area. Can you confirm that?
Yes, that's the documentation that I maintained from the original event and turned into Aero and the FBI.
Okay.
My name is Jeffrey Nusatelli. I'm a former military police officer with 16 years of active duty service in the U.S. Air Force. I'm here today because the American people have both the right and the responsibility to know the truth about unidentified aerial phenomenon. That truth remains hidden, classified and silenced by fear, retaliation, stigma, and confusion. Today, we are here to help break that silence. Between 2003 and 2005, 5 UAP incidents occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base, home to the National Missile Defense Project, a top national security priority. At the time, we were conducting launches deemed by the National Reconnaissance Office as the most important in 25 years. These were historic launches. These facilities were vital, and they were repeatedly visited by UAP. Each incident was witnessed by multiple personnel, documented, investigated, and reported up the chain of command. We sent information up, but we got no guidance down on how to handle these events. I personally witnessed one of these events and investigated others as they occurred. 6 other service members have provided me with the information that I will share with you today. The incursions began on October 14, 2003, when Boeing contractors reported a massive glowing red square silently hovering over 2 missile defense sites. After several minutes, it drifted further east onto the base and vanished over the hills. This event, now known as the Vandenberg Red Square, was referenced by Representative Luna at the first hearing on this topic. Official Air Force records of this event are in possession by Aero and the FBI.
At Capital Group, we design our active ETFs to weather the ups and downs of the market, so they can be rooted at the core of a portfolio. They're meticulously crafted to endure. Capital Group, actively different, active ETFs.
Rapidly. I heard my friends screaming, "It's coming right at us, it's coming right for us, and now it's right here." Moments later, I heard them say that it had shot off and was gone. When I arrived on scene, I talked to 5 shaken witnesses who described a massive triangular craft larger than a football field that hovered silently for about 45 seconds over their entry control point before shooting away at impossible speed. About a week later, another patrol reported a light over the ocean behaving erratically. Believing it might be an unannounced aircraft, they declared an emergency, and an armed response force responded. Before the forces could arrive, the object descended and either landed or hovered on our flight line and then took off again at impossible speed. The witnesses to this event were threatened and intimidated afterward. They were told to keep quiet and think about what they were reporting. After that, things did get quiet until about 2005, when another patrol reported a massive triangular craft larger than a C-130 silently floating over the installation. He watched it for a few minutes. It traveled west and disappeared into the night. And then I had my own encounter, again in 2005. I was off duty, sitting in my backyard with two other police officers when we noticed what first appeared to be a satellite in orbit, but it wasn't acting like a satellite. The light was strange, it was pulsing, and then it started to maneuver. It dropped in elevation. At times it would vanish from view and reappear in a different location in the sky, and eventually it reappeared 200 feet over my house. It was a 30-foot diameter sphere of light. My friends and I watched it for a moment, and then it gently accelerated and traveled up and disappeared into the stars. These events profoundly changed my life and the lives of my friends. We stand at a pivotal moment in history. The question is no longer whether these events are real, but whether we have the courage to face them. True leadership requires vision, a willingness to confront the unknown with transparency and resolve. So I ask the Congress to help we, the people, enact this vision. There are three goals: fund independent research and treat UAP study with the same seriousness as we would any other scientific field. 2, end secrecy and overclassification. Transparency is the foundation of truth. Without it, witnesses like us are dismissed. 3, protect the witnesses. Many stay silent out of fear for their careers, reputations, and the safety of their families. Protect them, and you will embolden others to join this cause. These phenomena challenge our deepest assumptions about reality, consciousness, and our place in the universe. Exploring them can unlock transformative breakthroughs in technology, biology, and human understanding. Let this be the moment when America chooses courage over fear, transparency over secrecy, and progress over stagnation. Let's show the world that our nation leads not only through strength, but through fearless pursuit of the truth. Thank you.
My name is Alexandro Wiggins. I'm an active duty U.S. Navy Operations Specialist, Senior Chief Petty Officer, father of 3, and dedicated American testifying today in my personal capacity. The views I share are my own, and I do not represent the official positions of the Department of the Navy or any subordinate organization. On the evening of February 15th, 2023, at approximately 19:15 PST, in the Whiskey 291 warning area off the coast of Southern California, I was serving on board USS Jackson. During that period, I moved between the Interior Communications Center, ICC-1, and the bridge wing, correlating the sensor picture with visual observations, part of my routine responsibilities for surface and air picture management. What I observed and what our crew recorded was not consistent with conventional aircraft or drones as they appear on our system. A self-luminous tic-tac shaped object emerged from the ocean before linking up with 3 other similar objects. The 4 then disappeared simultaneously with a high synchronized near instantaneous acceleration. I observed no sonic boom and no conventional propulsion signatures, no exhaust plume, no control surface articulation on the Sapphire image system. Shortly after the synchronized departure, radar tracks dropped. These observations were multi-sensor and recorded inside of ICC-1 with time location overlay visible in our source frames that have been made public by journalists. From my experience operating in this region over many years, and consistent with our public characterized encounters, unidentified does argue the systematic stigma-free reporting and for the preservation of sensor data so analysts can evaluate safe and intelligence implications with rigor. I want to underscore 3 points for the task force and the committee. Aviation and maritime safety. When crews and watchstanders observe objects that maneuver or accelerate in ways that does not match known profiles and do so near our ships and aircraft, that is first and foremost a safety issue. Standardized checklists and training should ensure we capture the best possible sensor data in real time, including IR settings, slant range estimates, and bearing and range altitude snapshots, and immediate chain of custody for any recordings. Reporting without stigma, protection without retribution. Sailors need to know that reporting UAP encounters will not harm their careers. Congress can help by reinforcing witness protection and by directing the relevant office to maintain confidential, destigmatized channels for service members who step forward with data. Declassification and transparency where possible. The task force declassification mission is directly relevant here, where operational security permits releasing metadata preserved sensor excerpts or at least technical summaries would improve public trust and accelerate outside scientific scrutiny. That includes, when feasible, the time geo-reference IR frames and radar parameters needed for independent analysis. To be clear, I am not here to make claims beyond my lane. I am here to provide a first-hand account of what I saw, what our systems recorded, and why it matters for safety, for intelligence, and public confidence. My request to you is practical. Help us capture, protect, fairly evaluate the evidence, and provide a safe pathway for those in uniform to report it. In closing, I want to thank the committee and the task force for holding this hearing and for placing this discussion in a forum where evidence can be examined carefully and openly. I appreciate your attention and stand ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
I'm George Knapp, Chief Investigative Reporter at KLES TV in Las Vegas. I began my pursuit of this weird mystery way back in 1987, and for 38 years, I've always approached this as a news story. It's not a matter of faith or belief. To me, it's a story, and it's an important one. I'm proud to be here alongside these witnesses today, men who have seen strange things and stepped forward to tell the world about it. Whistleblowers and witnesses who step up are routinely insulted, belittled, or worse. They risk their reputations, their careers, their clearances, their livelihoods, and sometimes much more than that, even their freedom. I know that one of the goals of the task force here is to figure out ways to protect whistleblowers and witnesses, and it's a tall order because so many of the things that happen to witnesses like these are extra legal. They're carried out by persons unknown, as Mr. Dave Grush, sitting up at the top of the room, knows all too well, including events in recent days that have happened to him. I want to share a couple of things that I've learned along the way on this long journey, and I submitted most of that in written form because I estimate that my statement here today would take about 4.5 hours, so I'm going to try to jump over and touch on the more important salient points. I submitted a detailed written statement for the record, and we'll go into a lot of that here, but the public has been told over and over since the late 40s, there's nothing to worry about here. These mysterious craft seen by millions of people in the skies, in the oceans, over the land, are not real. They're not a threat. The witnesses are wrong. They're crackpots. Don't believe it. That changed for me. What got me hooked is the paper trail. Documents that were squeezed out of the U.S. government after the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, became the law of the land. And those documents paint a much different picture than what the public, the press, and Congress have been told over many years. The documents from military and intelligence personnel behind closed doors admit that, quote, these things are real. They're not fictitious. They can fly in formation. They're evasive, and they outperform any aircraft known to exist, including ours. The public, of course, as I said, has been told something much different. You know, back in 1989, I reported about a guy named Bob Lazar, who claimed that he worked at a facility dubbed S4 out in the Nevada desert, very near to Area 51. He said he was part of a reverse engineering program. He said there are alien craft that would be taken apart to figure out how they operated out there, and that was a pretty tall order. I had clearly taken a dive into the deep end of the pool there. But in the years since then, I've interviewed dozens of other people, and I've detailed what their testimony has been in the written statement. They include Senator Harry Reid, Senator Howard Cannon, also of Nevada, a guy named Al O'Donnell, who was the first general manager of EG&G in Nevada, which managed the Nevada test site, which blew up hundreds of nuclear weapons. There's a guy named Dr. James Lakatsky, who was a career scientist with the Defense Intelligence Agency, who was the guy who initiated a program called OSAP, Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program, which is, as far as we know, the largest acknowledged UFO program ever funded by the U.S. government, which put together an amazing pile of information that members of this committee and the world, most of which have never seen. The DIA still hasn't released 95% of what was prepared by that program at a cost of millions and millions of dollars. The one name I do want to bring up in this session, though, is Robert Bigelow. So looking into the idea of crash retrievals and reverse engineering, while OSAP, that program, was active, the DIA's contractor, Robert Bigelow of Las Vegas, made a bold attempt to acquire physical proof of UFO crashes. It's been widely reported and suspected that Lockheed Martin is one of the contractors, the defense contractors, that has held this stuff, stored it away in secrecy, and tried to figure out how it works. I have confirmed on the record that Robert Bigelow and a trusted colleague from OSAP met with and negotiated with senior executives at Lockheed Martin and hammered out a deal wherein Bigelow's company, Bass, would receive a quantity of unusual material that had been stashed away and protected at a facility in California. That material was not made here. I want to move on now to the Russia files, because that was going to be sort of the central impetus of what I was going to talk to you about today. Back in the early 90s, I got into Russia, met with a number of their defense officials, Ministry of Defense and others, who confirmed for me that Russia had been doing the same thing that the United States had been doing, that is, secretly studying UFOs while publicly saying something completely different. The documents and interviews that I obtained and have now shared with this task force show that the USSR launched what is almost certainly the largest UFO-UAP investigation in the world. The first phase of that was an order was sent out to the entire USSR military empire that every unit, you see anything strange in the sky, a craft, an orb, something unusual, you had to gather all the evidence, collect testimony from the witnesses, look for physical evidence, and all of that information went into one program at the Ministry of Defense. Thousands and thousands of these reports came in. A lot of them were first routed to the KGB, but then back to another program that came after this collection effort called Thread 3. And Thread 3 was an analysis program. We have provided to the committee the documents of what they were trying to do, and essentially they were trying to build their own UFOs. They were using the information from their observations and studies to try to figure out the technology. The guy who was in charge of that program, Colonel Boris Sokolov, told me that their goal was to basically develop technology that would be superior to anything we had, based on what they learned from UFOs.
Mr. Knapp, just in the name of time,
Sure.
to my understanding, did you have anything you wanted to submit for Congress to see in this committee?
I have submitted those documents.
Would you like to play any videos? Do you have a video that you would like to play?
I don't think it's for me to play.
No, that was for Alexander.
Yeah, Alexander's video.
Okay.
You could play it, he could narrate it.
Okay, we can, in the name of showing that video to everyone on task force, we'd like to play that video at this time.
Sure.
That took off earlier.
If we can get rid of the audio real quick. Mr. Wiggins and Mr. Knapp, we'll get back to what that video was in a moment, but we just want to make sure that it was entered into the record, as well as all the documents. Those will be able to be publicly found for everyone in the country to view. If we could, Mr. Knapp, we'll continue on the line of questioning, but I'm going to move on to Mr. Borland's opening statements.
My name is Dylan Borland, a former 1N1 geospatial intelligence specialist for the United States Air Force in an active duty enlisted capacity from 2010 to 2013. I've also been employed with BAE Systems and Intrepid Solutions as a senior analyst, expert in analyzing video, radar, and advanced electro-optical imagery for official identification of aerial order of battle, as well as naval and ground order of battle. I'm a federal whistleblower, having testified to both the ICIG and ARROW with direct firsthand knowledge of and experience with craft and technologies that are not ours and are reportedly operating without congressional oversight. Because of my direct knowledge of the reality of certain legacy UAP programs, my professional career was deliberately obstructed, and I have endured sustained reprisals from government agencies for over a decade. From 2011 to 2013, I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, conducting 24-hour operations via manned and unmanned aerial vehicles for Special Operations Forces in the global war on terror. During the summer of 2012, my team was on standby for weather, and I returned to my barracks on base, and at approximately 01:30, I saw an approximately 100-foot equilateral triangle take off from near the NASA hangar on the base. The craft interfered with my telephone, did not have any sound, and the material it was made.
7 surprising reasons this engraving pen outsells all other DIY gifts. My wife surprised me with this, and now I'm hooked with
disturbance, sound, or wind displacement. Some years after that experience, I was further exposed to classified information from the UAP legacy crash retrieval program through a sensitive position I held within a special access program. During this time, intelligence officers approached me in fear for their own careers, citing misconduct within these programs and similar retaliation that I was already enduring at this time. These issues include medical malpractice committed by Veterans Affairs staff, denial of work I performed while enlisted in the United States Air Force, forged and manipulated employment documents, workplace harassment, including colleagues being directed to not speak with me, manipulation of my security clearance by certain agencies, blocking, delaying, and ultimately removing my ability to be employed within the IC. The retaliation I face and the retaliation against individuals I know who worked in these programs is what convinced me in March 2023 to become a whistleblower. I came forward out of concern for people's lives and to ensure I did everything I could to let our elected representatives know the truth about what is really happening in the executive branch. At the end of March 2023, I agreed to meet with ARROW following the suggestion of other federal officials believing it was what our nation required of me. I had reservations with ARROW due to assessments they were reporting publicly at the time as a misrepresentation of the truth. Because of these concerns, I did not share sources and methods information in order to protect current and former federal personnel who had firsthand exposure to technologies of unknown origin. I did not want anyone to face further retaliation beyond what they had already endured. And unfortunately, a staff member ended up getting in some trouble because of that. After David Grush testified under oath in the summer of 2023 and provided historic disclosure, I was then asked to go to the ICIG and did so in August 2023. It was very clear early on during my intake interview, which was video recorded under oath, that the objective was to solely assess how much I know and not move forward with an investigation with new information I provided them. The aftermath of that IG complaint still troubles me to this day. Since my ICIG complaint, I've been prevented from resuming prior employment and can confirm I'm still blacklisted from certain agencies within the intelligence community. In addition, multiple agencies attempted phishing attacks to assess what I had divulged to the Inspector General, including being asked to disclose details of my ICIG complaint during a CI polygraph for a position unrelated to UFO UAP matters as recently as November 2024. As I sit before you today, I and many other whistleblowers have no job prospects, no foreseeable professional future, and a nation every single one of us came forward to defend. Numerous individuals have come forward in various ways to reveal the truth of the UAP reality as patriots and defenders of our nation. Yet many feel discarded, isolated, hopeless, separated from the country they serve. Efforts to rectify this situation for all whistleblowers have been difficult and troubling, and to my fellow whistleblowers and officials who know this information, I offer you my apology, something that I have never gotten, and I'm giving it to you. I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States, an oath that demands truth and transparency for our democratic republic to function. Each day, these truths remain hidden from our citizens. Humanity drifts further from the principles our nation was founded to uphold. Each day, victims of crimes committed by agencies and companies maintaining this secrecy are denied justice is another day our Constitution is shredded. In 2023, Patriots provided this committee and the executive branch with undeniable proof of the UAP reality, and I commend your continued commitment. The future of humanity is one which we either travel to the stars or regress to the Stone Age with this technology. My career has been to deliver critical information to decision makers. Your role as elected by your representatives is to act on it. The time to act is now. Thank you.
I'm a senior policy counsel at the Project on Government Oversight, a nonpartisan independent watchdog organization that investigates and exposes waste, corruption, abuse of power, and when the government fails to serve the public or silences those who report wrongdoing. Whistleblowers are the first line of defense to root out waste, fraud, abuse of power, and corruption in our government. Congress relies on whistleblowers so that it can fully exercise its oversight and legislative authorities. It's understandable that former presidents of both parties have often taken a hostile approach toward whistleblowers. Their disclosures can embarrass the president and their political party or even lead to a national scandal. But whistleblowers continue to play a vital role during both Democratic and Republican administrations. They help Congress and the public identify and understand what government corruption looks like. Their disclosures fuel investigations and allow us to address wrongdoing and hold those responsible to account. That's why historically there's been a strong bipartisan consensus in Congress to support and protect whistleblowers. Doing so protects the country and ensures our government is more responsive and accountable to the people. National security whistleblowing in particular is a tradition going back to the founding of our country.